She was the highest paid actress in Hollywood.
Darling, you wait here. Oh, you won't go away with me?
Carole Lombard, the queen of screwball comedy. Married to the king of Hollywood.
Clark Gable was the most popular actor in the world, bar none.
A fairy tale life, glamour, success, adoring fans.
Gable and Lombard were American royalty.
Hers was a star destined to shine even brighter.
You just wait and see.
But then came a mission to serve her country during World War II. And just like that, it all ended in a fireball. More than 70 years later, a man from Pittsburgh makes an agonizing climb.
Oh my God.
Scaling a rugged mountain near Las Vegas.
There are no roads, there are no trails, there are no animals living up on the top of Potosi Mountain. It is a sheer mountainside where the plane crashed. Climbing up toward the engine.
But Robert Matson had to see for himself the wreckage. Amazingly, it's still there. All these years after the crash that killed a film star and 21 other people, including 3 men from Western Pennsylvania.
I felt like I owed it to them all to do them justice and tell their story.
His unforgettable experience on Potosi Mountain and years of research would inspire Matson's new book, Fireball, Carole Lombard and the Mystery of Flight 3.
I have always been drawn to aviation.
Matson spent years working as a communications contractor for NASA.
I did work with the astronauts.
It was a big accomplishment for a boy who grew up in small-town California, PA, graduating from college right there in his hometown and learning to love the movies.
My parents were both big movie fans, and I grew up in a culture of watching classic pictures.
You have to go away.
That led to writing screenplays.
And I got close on a couple of them.
He directed an award-winning documentary on the French and Indian War.
Action!
Then hit his stride with Hollywood biographies. Errol Flynn Slept Here. Followed by a book on Flynn's relationship with Olivia de Havilland. In 2014, his longtime fascination with Carole Lombard would emerge in Fireball.
I always was drawn to her as a personality, Carole Lombard. She's a very contemporary person. She was way ahead of her time in thinking of Hollywood as a business. She was a big believer in equal rights for women. She was out there espousing, come on, gals, be your own boss.
But the road to becoming Carole Lombard wasn't easy for Jane Alice Peters of Fort Wayne, Indiana. In 1908, her parents separated. Mrs. Peters moved her children to Los Angeles. By age 12, Carole was in the movies and already a starlet when she reached her teens.
She was actually chosen by John Barrymore to be in his next big picture when she was in a terrible car crash that mangled her face. A gash right here that never healed right. She had cuts up through here, she had a scar over here. She had her upper lip was almost severed. She was told she was never gonna look normal again, and she certainly would never have a Hollywood career.
But Lombard learned the art of good makeup, good lighting, and a good strategy for avoiding the casting couch.
This was a man's town, Hollywood was, and the producers would try to get her to sleep with them to land parts, and she would keep them at bay with this really rough talk, and then that became part of her personality.
Salty language off-screen, hamming it up on-screen, Lombard found her niche in comedy.
Doctor, I want to know the worst. I don't want you to spare our feelings. We go to press in 15 minutes.
Earning a Best Actress Oscar nomination in 1936 for My Man Godfrey, opposite her ex-husband William Powell. Then at a Hollywood party, Lombard reconnected with a former co-star.
And Carole and Clark really hit it off. They were seen everywhere together, even though he was still legally married to someone else. Well, that wouldn't fly, especially in the Bible Belt. So there was pressure from Clark Gable's studio, MGM, for this couple to marry, and fast.
Gable finalized an expensive divorce. The couple married in 1939 and lived on a picturesque ranch. He made Gone with the Wind. She made top dollar for a leading lady of that era.
She was very generous with the down-and-out actors, crew members who needed a helping hand.
Her cast and crewmates loved her, and so did the fans.
The closest I think you can come to them today is Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. But Clark and Carole were more popular than that. They were more glamorous. They were unequaled as the beautiful Hollywood couple. Behind the scenes, they had their ups and downs. She was very, very much in love with him, and he was very, very much in love with himself. At this stage of his life, he was self-involved, spoiled rotten, immature, and fooling around on her.
At Pearl Harbor, at Hickam Field, in the bomb-pocked streets of Honolulu, ever is written history.
A month after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Lombard volunteered to sell war bonds in her home state of Indiana.
Let's give a rousing cheer that will be heard in Berlin and Tokyo.
It was captured in newsreels. It gathered thousands of people together. She then moved inside the Capitol and sold bonds for just 1 hour and raised $2 million.
Lombard was traveling with her mother, Elizabeth Peters, and Gable's press agent, Otto Winkler. Both Peters and Winkler were afraid to fly. Lombard had promised everyone they'd take the train to and from Indiana, but she was worried about getting home to Gable, who was working on a picture with Lana Turner.
MGM's new sexpot, Olive 21, 10 years younger than Carole, and very much a threat to Carole. And Clark was taken with Lana Turner, and their association set in motion events that would culminate in Carole's death.
On January 16, 1942, Lombard convinced her traveling companions to board TWA Flight 3.
Flight 3 takes off on a clear moonless night, and it's flying lower than usual, and it's flying on a course that people weren't used to seeing. And then a few minutes after that, there we saw a fireball on Potosi Mountain.
When Robert said, I'm thinking about climbing a mountain, the first thing I thought was, well, you're not going without me.
Mary Matson has been at her husband's side since the Lombard Project began, helping with exhaustive research, training for the exhausting climb up Potosi Mountain.
When the day finally came, I mean, I was excited, nervous.
Mary would only make it partway, and for good reason.
It was very rough. There are still photos and video, and none of it does justice to how brutal that mountain is. Landing gear.
Vegas.
Robert and his guide would reach the summit. They learned firsthand why the recovery team in 1942 felt it was safer to leave much of the wreckage behind.
And it's still being recovered today. Carole Lombard's jewelry was only found in recent years by people just sort of poking around up there.
Matson even found a human bone. He and his guide buried it and said a prayer.
I wanted to feel accomplishment that I had finally gotten to this crash site that I had wanted to go to for years. But what I felt was grief.
The same grief felt by a hopeful rescue party that reached this spot 72 years ago. The first man on the scene determined to find someone alive.
Miss Lombard, he called out, his voice thin and lonely. He saw what appeared to be a green rock in the snow. No, not a rock, a man. And then another. Men in military overcoats. Three of them, sprawled about in the snow, face down, face up, odd angles, all of them dead and frozen to the spot.
And I'm picking it up.
Matson doesn't forget the 21 others who died with Lombard, people like Sergeants Bob and Ed Nygren, brothers from Dunbar, Fayette County, who were serving together in the Army Air Corps, and Sergeant Al Belichak, who left the steel mills of Braddock for the exciting life of a flyer. For inspiration, a model of the doomed aircraft was always nearby.
I kept it right next to my computer keyboard for the length of writing Fireball. It's a character in the story, really.
The exact cause of the crash was never determined. Gable was crushed and burdened by guilt.
He appreciated Carole Lombard more after her death than he ever did in life. This self-involved man was gone and replaced by just a more sensitive human being. One of a thousand ironies in this story is that Clark became the person Carole always wanted him to be after she was gone.
Gable's career lost its spark when Lombard died, and with the world at war, the news media moved on.
Lots of Americans were dying, and it wasn't front page news anymore about Carole Lombard.
Fate was not kind to Carole Lombard. She was just 33 when she died on that mountain. But film, photographs, and now Fireball have been kind.
There you go.
I'm really proud of what Robert has accomplished.
Forever capturing that beauty.
This is the one that I actually really like, with the hair over her eye.
Forever preserving her talent.
It was her own personality that she allowed to escape onto celluloid that made her special and set her apart.
Come, this is no way.
Forever telling the story of Carole Lombard.
She was a fighter, a very generous spirit all through her Hollywood career.
She was right there ready to help.
Just a genuinely warm and loving human being.